welcome to Kicking It with Sensei, and today we're joined by Dr. Jon Xue Zhang. I hope I pronounced that right.
Yeah. You know, I just go by John. That's
Jon.
absolutely fine.
Perfect. Now, a lot of people might have seen you on Master Wong's videos, but you've been a martial artist in your own right for many, many years. And
Yes.
could you just give the audience a little bit of background into your martial arts?
Sure, yeah. So I've been training since the age of 5.
Mm.
So I've been training for about 28 years. So you can probably work out how old I am. I try to forget that. Though, yeah, I started training in various styles of Kung Fu under my father. And he then sent me to train with other people. And he found a guy who taught me SAS called Jerome. And this guy, he has been my instructor since. He taught me different styles of Kung Fu, karate, Aikido, Jiu-Jitsu, Hapkido, Arnis, and Silat, and to name a few anyway. So I learned what I do from him. I competed many years ago in Kung Fu, karate, kickboxing. I was formerly the psychologist to the Saudi Arabian national taekwondo team, and yeah, and then these days I'm also the psychologist for Titan Academy in London. But I also work as a stunt performer in films, and so yeah, I work as an actor as well, fight choreographer, stunt performer, stunt coordinator, just on smaller projects. But yeah, it's so I think with the martial arts, you get it gets split into 3 main categories. You've got fighting, health, and performance. So I think at some stage in our lives, we've done all 3. And these days, I'm focusing more with the performance element for work anyway. And when it comes to training for myself, it's more of the fighting element as well as the health. So yeah, been training for 28 years, and I never skipped a day.
Excellent. Something I actually found out only, I think it was 2 days ago when I actually asked you on, was that you were involved in the Fast and Furious films. How did
Yes.
that come about? I'm a massive fan of that franchise.
So it was always a dream to work on big films, and Fast and Furious being one of the highest grossing, series of films. I thought, I really wanted to work on that. There's something about that I was really appealing to me, and I think partially because a lot of people have described me as an Asian Vin Diesel, and I can live with that. That's a nice.
That's one acceptable.
Yeah, it's like, and people are comparing me. You're comparing me to this celebrity. My voice isn't as deep, but hey, I can. I'm okay with this. So I've been involved with film for about 11 years now, and I've had a few auditions here and there for different projects and everything, and then you make connections and make friends. So it's not, they say it's not what you know, but who you know. But it's also about who knows you. So I had an audition for Fast and Furious 5, which got cancelled on the day. So I thought, no, I booked a day off work for this. And then, yeah, a few years later, I mean, I continued to work in film, different projects. And in 2018, I believe it was August 2018, I got an email through my website, much like how you got in touch with me, asking if I would be interested in auditioning for a large film, because I might be a good fit to join their stunt team. And I thought, okay, they weren't particularly clear about what film this was. So there was a lot of guesswork, and they gave nothing away. So we spoke over the phone, and they said, yeah, so still can't tell you what film it is. Do you want to come in tomorrow into Shepperton Studios, and we can, discuss it further and, see what you can do. So I thought, yeah, okay, I'll do that. Yeah, I'm not doing anything tomorrow anyway, so that's fine. Which was not the case. I changed all my plans.
Yeah, of course.
For this. And yeah, I got to Shepperton Studios. Hadn't been there in a couple of years, but I thought, okay, this is pretty cool. Bit daunting because it's a huge film studio. And I walked into the big warehouse unit, and there were Fast and Furious posters everywhere. I thought, this might be a Fast and Furious film, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna assume, but and yeah, they got in touch with me directly, which was fantastic. And basically, the stunt coordinator, he said, look, we were looking for large Asian martial artists who could move, and we found you. I said, how on earth did you find me? They said, oh, just Google. I said, what on earth were you searching for? And yeah, so you know, we did the audition and everything, and it was probably one of the physically one of the most strenuous things I've ever done. So basically, we had to. It was me and two other guys. We were the bad guys, and there was one of the American stunt team in the middle. He was the good guy. We had to learn the choreography, and you know, as soon as you go 3, 2, 1, action, you know, you get thrown to the ground, get back up, you get taken out again. And then the fight choreographer said, right, reset, let's do that again and again and again. And then he said, okay, switch. So then we had to learn each other's choreography. And it was, that was quite tiring. And it was funny because the fight choreographer said, as soon as you get slammed to the ground, take your time in getting up because you're in pain. You know, act as if you're in pain. And inside I was like, I'm not even acting. But a couple months later, they got me on set, and I had a scene with Dwayne Johnson. I didn't realize it was going to be with him until maybe a couple of days before. So I was working at a university at the time, and so I think when we went for the rehearsal, it was the Saturday or the Sunday, and then I was at work on Monday and Tuesday, and on the Wednesday I was on set. So that Monday and Tuesday I couldn't concentrate. I was like, oh my goodness, you know, it's like everything that's happening at work at the moment seems insignificant to the fact that I'm going to be facing off with The Rock.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a good 12+ hour shoot for me anyway. And we shot that scene where he throws me over a table 6 times, 6 takes, and he could not have been more kind and genuine. So everything you ever see about him, because I get a lot of people say, you know, what's he like? What's Dwayne Johnson like? And everything you see about him on social media is very much who he is.
Yeah.
He's very professional, very hardworking, and very kind, very charismatic as well. Like he pulled me up every single time, and normally you just expect to get back up, but he, you know, reached down and pulled me back up. And after the last take, he said, you know, brother, thank you so much for your time. Your hard work and your dedication or your commitment will contribute towards the success of this film. I hope I can work with you again. And he gave me another bro hug, fist bumped everyone, and left. And you know, I don't normally get starstruck, but I think it was at that point when he looked me right in the eyes and said that, I thought,
Yeah.
you know, this guy's wonderful.
Yeah. I think we all get starstruck at times now. It's like, even myself, I've had quite a few people on for interviews, and had Sean Kanan on a while back. But I think for 3 days leading up to this interview, I was completely shook up nerves. I was going, this is the franchise that got me into martial arts over 20 years ago, and now all of a sudden I'm speaking with one of the leads in it. But
that's incredible.
It's technology has made a massive difference in the world. I think
it really, really has, and it's there's so much interconnectivity now. You know, everything's connected, and especially during you know, the lockdown of last year, for instance, I feel that everyone is a lot more connected than they were before, for better, for worse.
That's it. Now, you've said you've trained in a lot of different martial arts over the years now, and you've done countless amounts. Do you think it's important to cross-train in martial arts and kind of mix things up a bit and sort of create your own system,
Absolutely.
so to speak?
Absolutely. I think it's good to pick a style first. So when I get beginners asking me, what's the best style, I always say, you know, see what's available to you in your immediate area. I'm sure a lot of them will offer a free trial, so don't be afraid to try them all out, you know. And then you can see what works for you at the moment. And once it runs its course, you can then start looking at other things. And I think it's important to know that the style that you start off with may not be the style that you end up doing later on down the line. But I think cross training is exceptionally important, just because if I'm just doing if I'm only training with the same types of people, I'm only going to get used to the kind of attacks that they're going to throw at me, you know. So if I'm doing, say, Aikido, I love Aikido. So, you know, if the way they practice it, for instance, the punches might not be boxing punches. So it's like the technique won't work against someone who throws a punch like a boxer. So if I then start training in boxing, get a good idea of how I can throw punches, head movement, you know, slipping and everything, then I can adjust my Aikido to take into account what a boxer would do, and I can start making those adjustments. I think that's important. And as a boxer, okay, now I've done my Aikido. Now I've moved on to boxing. Now, you know, instantly day one I'm sparring, doing pad work, and I'm probably going to ache more than I've ever ached before. Okay, so that's good for body conditioning, you know, cardiovascular fitness, and actually getting used to people throwing punches at your face. Okay, you know, once I get good at this, maybe I want to move into something that's more something that gets more close, you know. So like then you've got like styles like, say, Krav Maga, which are quite well rounded. But I think it's good to know one style, but it can't be the only thing you know. I think it's good to have a general knowledge of other styles, and you will excel in some stuff more than others. So it's like, when I was younger, I could do a lot more of the flamboyant kicks. These days I have to warm up, but there's a place for that. And I think, like, if I want to keep someone at distance, for instance, you know, you could use your legs. So, you know, Taekwondo is a good one. You know, even Muay Thai is fantastic, especially for the power. So I think it's good to cross train, not just to get a well-rounded knowledge, but also to be able to adjust what you currently do against those types of styles, because you never know who you're going to come up against and what style they do. So it's always good to explore.
Yeah. One of the things I've noticed, just as you say, there is a system I've done for a long time. We had a few students come in, and only white belts, but they were training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu alongside it. And I noticed within 6 months to a year, I was struggling on the ground with them. So I've really had to reevaluate, and I've started to add a little bit of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in now, but I'd only kind of started. I've done 3-4 classes, and then lockdown happened. But but it's something that I definitely want to look more into. And I think, especially wrestling or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I think has to be something that's approached these days. It's definitely.
I think that's important. I think wrestling is important. You know, I think groundwork is exceptional. You need that. I think striking is only one piece of the puzzle. And my instructor, you know, would always say it's martial arts, not partial arts. You know, you need to be proficient in all of them. You know, well, he said to me, you have to be good at everything. I think I'm just okay at everything. You know, I can dabble. So I think it's with groundwork. If I choose to stay in my comfort zone and not practice it, then I'm going to be in for a surprise when someone takes me down. I think it's important, even if you are not the best grappler, to have a good understanding of different positions on the ground, things you could do to escape and get to safety. So I think with grappling, because I love grappling, I love it. But before MMA became a huge craze, I used to love grappling anyway. And it was like, I would grapple with anyone. It would be wrestlers, guys who did jiu-jitsu, but also rugby players. Because with rugby players, they don't have that kind of martial technique. They have other technique, and they have their instinct. So it's like if you're a jiu-jitsu player, anyone who's listening, for instance, if you're a jiu-jitsu player, you grapple a lot, chances are you probably don't enjoy grappling white belts, because when you practice with other martial artists, they stick to that code of conduct. They stick to that paradigm in which they train in. So, however, when you start training with a complete beginner, they still have that beginner instinct and they do some wild things.
Yeah.
So I would also, so when I'm grappling with rugby players, for instance, it's like for them, brute strength, force, and everything. And they know how to balance themselves, because they are always running and tackling people. So they're used to that. So I always felt it was important to vary up who I wrestle with. And I learn a lot of things. It's like, okay, I've got him in this position. Now he's reaching for my groin. Okay. So, but that's important, that's important that we get used to that kind of stuff. Because I think when you're doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I think it is fantastic. I had a friend who was a very decent grappler, a really, really decent grappler. We used to fight together, actually, as we used to street fight together. I won't go into that too much, but he took a guy down. It was a very nice takedown, but he cracked his own kneecap on the concrete because he'd only ever practiced on mats. And I think he was overly keen to practice his techniques. There he is, doing what he's got to do. The guy he's mounted puts his hands on my friend's chest. Of course, my friend then swings his leg around, does a very nice armbar, and cracks his own head on the curb as he drops back. And I thought, ooh, so he was actually worse off than the guy he was armbarring. So I think it's important that we take those factors into account as well. There are limitations. Nothing's perfect, but it's up to us as to how far we take those skills. Yeah. So I think a general knowledge is important. Then we can start specializing, building on that knowledge.
Yeah, definitely. And do you think training has changed over the last maybe 20 years from how it would have been done when you first started?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the things that have stayed the same are time, dedication, discipline, commitment, all those things, basics. Those are things that have, they will stay the same. I think what changes would be what's trending at the moment. And, UFC took the world by storm. So it's like, okay, MMA, that became such a huge thing, huge phenomenon, and it's still growing. So, for me, when I was younger, it was like there weren't so many well-rounded fighters. Either you were a striker, or and if you did grappling, your striking probably wasn't that good. But it's like now with MMA, it's like, okay, you got guys who can do everything, or you've got guys who are very good with weapons. It's like, okay, and when you practice MMA, for instance, you don't usually practice against someone who has a stick or a knife or a baseball bat. And so over time, things have certainly changed with how we train, but also, science is always evolving, and we're always discovering new things about the body. So it's like, training methods will change in terms of how we take care of ourselves, like weight training, even nutrition, that'll changes. I mean, even supplementation. So those are things that change over time. And so for sure, whilst you've got things that are still very current, very, things that you did back then that you still do now, you now have to take into account everything else that is happening. And it can be a full-time job just keeping on top of all that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that one of the big changes I've noticed, like from when I first started training, was the health and safety factor. There's things we would have done as teenagers, and now as an instructor and an adult, if I'd done that with my students, every parent would be lined up outside to complain. I think one of the biggest things I remember was learning break falling and doing it outside on concrete, because the instructor believed it was no good learning to do it on a mat if you're going to be needing to use it outside. So he reckons fall outside. And I think for the first few weeks you were coming home bruised and cut, but you learned it very quickly and perfected it very quickly. So, but you wouldn't get away with it now.
No, I mean, certainly that is quite a correct approach in that is how you learn quickly. And you know what, you're probably going to fall on a very hard ground. Though, yeah, insurance won't cover it, and you know, it's I think these days it's like when I was younger, we didn't have mats. We did not have mats to fall on, so you learned pretty quickly. And with my instructor, who can still throw me around like a rag doll, I would say, it's like now because I work in I'm not too sure which. No, I mean it was the martial arts for me that came first because I always knew how to land, which certainly helps with the stunt work. Absolutely, it does. And I think with I remember we moved to this dance studio. That's where we would teach the classes were, and the floors had some spring to them, and it was lovely. You know, it was really nice to fall onto that, and you could just roll off it. And then I taught a seminar with my instructor, and he demonstrated a throw on me, and it was in a scout hall, quite a big hall, and it was wood, but there was concrete underneath it. There was no give, and I remember landing and thinking, this is going to be a long 3 hours. So, you know, I think health and safety, absolutely. You know, I think at the end of the day, you know, you want people to get something out of it. You still want them to enjoy it. And I think having hard mats is fine. You know, I think the concrete these days, absolutely, you couldn't get away with it now.
Definitely. And you mentioned sort of trending martial arts earlier and the rise of MMA and UFC and all the rest. Do you think there's much that MMA can learn from the traditional martial arts? What do you think would be the big thing that they could carry on that they're not?
I don't think so. I think so. If we take it back to ancient China, for instance, now I'm from this tiny little village, and in this village I practice my style. Now I'm going to go on a pilgrimage, and I'm going to travel around the country, and you and we meet at in some forest. Why not? And you're a martial artist also. Okay. Let's say you and we get on quite well. We might drink some tea together. Okay, you're a martial artist. Hey, let's test our skills. Okay. I managed to catch some hits on you. You managed to hit me too. Okay. And your style is completely different to mine. So, okay, we'll train together. We'll exchange some techniques. And then, cool, fantastic. Thank you very much. I bow to you, and then we go our separate ways. I may never see you again, but I may hear stories about you, you know. And then what happens is, you know, I come across other people like you from other villages or whatever. Then I come back to my village, and my style that I've been practicing in my village then changes because of all the people that I've encountered on my way. For me, that is the literal term of mixed martial arts. So I feel that a genuine traditional martial artist is a mixed martial artist of the literal definition of that. So if you are a traditional martial artist, you should not be afraid to go and test it with other people. And then you will make slow, you know, and gradual adjustments to your technique and as to why doing it this way would be better than doing it this way instead. And that only comes from pressure testing and against resistant opponents from other systems, other styles, you know. So it's so you might get in your class, for instance, you might get a boxer or a Thai boxer who comes in, or a Taekwondo guy, and they all fight differently with their range, with their variety of techniques. That forces you to grow, you know. It's so in essence, if you learn nothing, then you stay where you are. You know, if you decide to make adjustments to your technique, if you still keep getting caught out with the same technique, then you didn't learn anything. So if you, okay, I know that as soon as he throws that kick to my head, there's a second one that's going to come to my ribs as soon as I go to block it. So, you know, maybe I changed my block slightly or something like that, you know, and then, you know, you are now incorporating different forms of movements because you've now been forced to grow. That is mixed martial arts. You know, I think modern mixed martial arts now is boxing, Thai boxing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, judo, wrestling. It's those maybe even karate. But that's 5 or 6 disciplines out of countless. You know, so I think when I talk to mixed martial artists, for instance, I'll say to them, look, guys, you know, I think it's great what you're doing, but you know, there are other styles out there as well. You know, you can learn something from every style. You know, you're not required to master one style. You know, you're just trying to pick and choose what's best for you. You know, not for the style, but for you. You know, and that way, it's like Wing Chun, for instance. Now, I'm certainly not the best at Wing Chun because, yeah, well, you know, I think physically, like I have physical limitations when it comes to Wing Chun, you know, but it's like the principles of that, you know, I really like some of the principles because they really work. So I'll use some of those things and, you know, chain punching, for instance, and then I'll move on to something else. I thought, okay, you know, a bit of Aikido or a bit of Jiu-Jitsu, you can mix it all together. And like Hapkido, for instance, now that's, you got karate strikes, you got, you know, Taekwondo-esque kicks, you got Aikido, some Jiu-Jitsu there, you got some weapons. So, you know, Hapkido is a very mixed art in that regard. So, you know, if you're a traditional martial artist, I feel that if you're a true traditional martial artist, you are a literal mixed martial artist. But you need that conscious effort to go out and try those things.
You do, yeah, definitely. I was a big fan of Aikido as well. It's reason why is I've always sort of heard that it's kind of very the spiritual side of things, and you constantly hear about how ineffective it would be in a street situation. And I think one of the last times I actually got into an altercation, and everything that I've trained, it was the Aikido technique that actually got me out of it, the Kodogeshi.
Yes.
So, but it was one of those situations. It was the last thing I thought I would have used.
Yes.
And your man just walked straight under it, and I thought, if it works. But
you know, that's amazing, because when I hear people saying Aikido doesn't work and everything, I mean, to be fair, when you watch the demonstrations, they are demonstrations. You know, it's like your opponent is compliant, but it's a demonstration, it's a performance. Because you're showcasing the technique. Now, any technique, I know some of the techniques can look, and this is across all styles, some of the techniques can look completely outrageous. But I would argue that every technique within reason has a place. So long as you choose the best time to deploy it, you know, and like you said, it's when you least expect it, it's there, you go for it, you know, without thinking about it. It's like, And with Aikido, I would say, you know, of course there are criticisms of it. I like to look at the positives of it. Now, it's like everything that we can do now comfortably are things that we struggled to do when we were beginners. You know, it's like everything we can do now may have looked impossible when you know, when we were beginners. Now, so if that's where we are now, then what's to say that these really advanced techniques across any style, you know, that we could achieve those things in the future. We're just not there yet. And I think it's important that we are in a state of growing. We are always learning. So I never put a cap on that. With me, you know, if there's a technique that I think, that just looks terrible. That you couldn't do that in a real life situation. So I personally never say that, because I always think, okay, what if could you make it work? And if so, what context could that possibly work in? And then you really have to open your mind to those possibilities, and only then can you then take the step through, you know, through that door and think, okay, now you start thinking. And if you try that particular technique, for instance, and it still doesn't work, hey, you learn something. You know, it's like you might learn a different technique from doing that. You know, it's like by accident. And you know what? Martial arts is, I would argue, it is quite serendipitous. You know, you do stumble on things. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this is not the one I was going for. But back to what you're saying with Aikido. Now, when I used to work the doors, and you've got multiple attackers coming from every direction, Aikido is very useful, very, very useful. Exceptionally, you know, especially, you know, you've got people coming at all angles. You're constantly moving, redirecting force because, you know, one person, doesn't matter how strong you are, you're not going to be stronger than 4 people, 5 people, 10 people, you know, or even 3 people or 2. So, or even the one person, you know what I mean? It's like, so you can't depend on physical strength. It certainly helps. You know, I will say that. However, when someone's coming at you and then someone else coming at you, you know, it's redirecting that force, harmonizing with them. And I think that's so very important. And a couple of years ago, I was teaching a seminar with some Aikido guys at an Aikido alliance. I think they got quite a few Aikido schools together, and I was one of the I was one of the guys teaching seminars. And there was a guy called Bill, who was the head of the association, and I think he's in his 80s, and you know, I saw him put one of my friends on his knees, and my friend is what, almost 7 foot, and Bill, this frail old, you know, 80-year-old, puts his wrist on top of my friend's, and my friend is on his knee and he can't stand up. And I thought, okay. I said to him, look, Bill, that looks incredible. Would you be able to do that to me? Look, I don't come from a strict Aikido background. I would love to see that. He goes, yeah, of course. So one, he accepted that, and two, I think he accepted because I was respectful about it as well, because I was curious and very, very curious. So I'm on, you know, I'm on my knee, okay, and I put my wrist here. He puts his wrist on top of mine. He goes, okay, stand up, and you know, I can press heavy. My legs are strong, and my whole, you know, I lift a lot of weights, and my core strength is, you know, I work on that a lot.
Yeah.
I kid you not, I couldn't stand up. And he was so relaxed. It just felt like something was blocking me to be able to stand up. And of course, for me personally, if I realize that as soon as I realize I can't do something, I'll go around it, I'll do something else. If I throw a punch and the guy blocks it and it doesn't go through his block, I'll work my way around it. You know, but the whole thing with him was he put his wrist on top of mine. I thought, I'm not going to be a douche and try something else and take his leg instead. I was there simply to ask the question, can you show me what you just did on my friend? And I kid you not, I could not stand up. And it was awesome because he was so relaxed. There was no power there whatsoever. There was just, but I also didn't feel any resistance. I mean, the only resistance I felt was his wrist contact against mine. But the more I tried, the more tired I felt, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it was, so you know what? From the outset, if you ever watch a video of that, you're like, yeah, whatever. But then if you're there experiencing it, it's completely different. So that taught me that, hey, you know, I'm not there yet. And maybe when I'm that age, I'll be able to do that. And then in the future, when I can do that particular technique, I'll be like, you know, I can tell people, hey, look, you know, 20 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, I saw this old man called Bill do the same thing to me, and I couldn't get my head around it.
Yeah.
But hey, now I can. So everything that we can do now seemed impossible from when we first started, when we were beginners, when we first started. So everything we'll be able to do in the future may seem just as impossible. You know what I mean? So I think it's important that we keep a very open mind.
Definitely. It's puts me in mind of our founder now, guy Bernie Witcher, and he's 84 now. But he would often come to seminars and things with the kids, and he would show a technique, and he would call instructors over. He would use Suzuki, and anytime he comes on these steps in the mats, you see all the instructors vanish. It's because he does a technique, but it's a hell of a lot more painful than if we're doing it on ourselves. So it's unbelievable. But do you think that's one of the sort of magical things about martial arts? You can do it from 5-year-old right up until your 80s. It's one of the few activities you can really spend a lifetime at.
Absolutely. And when you are younger, and that's something that does change. Yeah, in response to your earlier question as well, this is something that does change. So over time, when you're younger, you do all the hard stuff, really, really hard, and as you get older, you do more of this and that, it's like, because when you're younger, you have so much energy, and then as you get older, that energy might take a bit of a dip. You need to recover a bit more, it's like, so you can't do the hard stuff as much anymore. So as you get older, you start softening. So it's not that you're not as dangerous anymore, as lethal. Your focus has just changed. It's like you've gone from hard to something soft. Now, I'll give you an example. So it's like, let's say I've just finished training. I'm really, really tough. I'm feeling really strong. 4 guys come at me now. Okay, they approach me on the street. I'm feeling very confident. And this guy comes over to me. He throws a punch. I block it. It did nothing to me. I felt nothing. I throw one punch at him. He's down. Okay. Next guy. So now I'm feeling pretty proud of myself. Next guy catches me in the face. Oh, now I'm angry, or I'm feeling aggression. So then I will then be quite fiery towards him. I'll be a lot more aggressive towards him. And then, oof, wow, that's taking it out of me. You take oxygen away from fire. Fire's no longer there. So now I'm exhausted. I'm absolutely exhausted. And the next guy throws a punch or whatever. It's like my strong block that I did with the first guy might not do it, so I might have to slip it a little, or block it and then duck my head underneath or something, so my defense would be very soft. It's like I would be redirecting him and the next guy as well. So then my approach would be a lot more less confrontational, more harmony. So in the course of fighting, within, I'd say, 5 seconds, 10 seconds against 2, 3, or 4 people, how I've moved has already changed. You know what I mean? It's like, now sometimes you get guys who are just solid through and through from start to finish. But if we extend that, okay, you're solid. You're a full-on, boxer. You're very, very strong, and that is your style. You'll tire out. When you're tired, what can you do? You're boxing. You probably won't be as quick. You won't be as strong. So what can you do then? What can you do then? Which is why I think linking back to your cross-training question is important, because if I'm learning boxing, for instance, I'm very good at, Thai boxing, I'm very good at striking. Now, adrenaline kicked in, the whole situation is overwhelming me. Now I am exhausted. Even though my cardiovascular fitness might be really good for my training, I'm exhausted because of the adrenaline, the genuine severity of the situation that I'm in has caused me now to be absolutely exhausted. Okay, maybe now I need to know some jujitsu, something, or maybe something that I need to know, some aikido, some tai chi, for those times when I am tired. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think it's so this is what I do personally. I train. I always train when I don't want to, so that I can fight when I have to. That's one of my things. And when I'm training, it's like, I'm exhausted. The last thing I want to do right now is train. If I'm with, I've just come home from work. I'm exhausted. My manager it had a massive go at me for no apparent reason. Okay, I don't know. Okay, and then I just want to sit down, take a nap. But then, okay, no, let's see what I can do now. Let's see how my body moves under those conditions. Yeah. And you'll find that you move differently according to how you feel. So if I tell you, let's say you're having a great day and I tell you a really, really cracking, maybe inappropriate joke, you'll find it funny.
Yeah.
If, say, you're having a rough day, okay, if I tell you that same joke, you might not find it so funny anymore. You're like, dude, come on, grow up. So how we respond verbally with our personality, with our behavior, changes according to how we feel at the time. So we should train according to how we feel. You know, it's I think within reason, so we don't injure ourselves, and be mindful of that. So I think it's like if and when you can train when you don't want to, like I said, you can fight when you have to, because someone who picks a fight with you, it will always be a time of their choosing, not yours. Unless, of course, you are the one who throws the first punch. But I'm hoping none of you out there do that. But I would always say, you know, doesn't matter what age you are, martial arts is a lifelong journey. So it's with if I say, a lot of people always ask me, everyone asks me, could you take Master Wong in a fight? I get that all the time. And the thing is, I will say, okay, he is in the generation, he is in the elder generation than I am. We are at different stages of our training. If we're both in our primes, that would make for a great fight. As for who would win, hey, we'll never know. We'll never know. So it's like my success is predicated on, you know, I'm standing on those shoulders. You know, so I would never ever disrespect someone in an elder generation, because it's like if I can beat my instructor, for instance, if I can beat him now in sparring, or for instance, it's not because I'm better, it's because he's getting older. You know, it's so in our primes, that's something we'll never know. It's like when you see now it's like I'll always give a good account of myself, I'll say, but I think it's in terms of being respectful as well. Now, as my instructor gets older, for instance, I have found that he goes softer with a few of his techniques, so it's a lot more difficult to actually reach him. You know, when he was my age, for instance, which is weird because I'm 33 now, and this is the age that he was when I first met him. So it's a bit surreal for me to think that, but he was solid at the time. You know, it's like absolutely solid. Like you throw a punch, and if you blocked it, it would hurt you. It would hurt you a lot. You know, now he still is tough, though. If I go for him now, he may be less likely to want to be engaged in that kind of contact with me, where he's taking more damage. I mean, he can still do a lot of stuff. You know, it's like, so he's evolved his training into something that I have yet to see, just because I'm not there yet. You know, so we are growing constantly. So it doesn't matter what age you are. You know, it's all about where you are at that point in time. You know, so it's like, if it's you know, if it's a Thai boxer, for instance, you know, okay, if I'm fighting no, who's the top Buakor, for instance. Buakor is incredible. If I fight him in his 60s, for instance, he's 60 now, and or if you get a young man who fights him in the 60s and beats Buakor, then it's like, well, okay, but you beat the guy because and because of that age limitation, not because you were a better fighter. You know what I mean? So it's those it's like anyone who fights Mike Tyson, for instance, because I think when he came back from prison, when he got out of prison, he wasn't the same person anymore. So you had people who were beating Mike Tyson who shouldn't have been able to say, I beat Mike Tyson. You know what I mean? It's so you know, but I'm always I think it's always important to maintain that level of respect for different people in different generations. It's like if you and I are sparring, for instance, and I beat you or you beat me, it's just better on who's on, you know, better who's, you know, on. And let's start again. So it's who's the better man on the day, if that makes sense. And I might have had something going on. I mean, like yesterday, my car broke down, and my car is 2 weeks old. So it's like, okay, you and I are sparring and you start catching all these hits on me. Maybe my mind is somewhere else. You know what I mean? It's like, okay. But I will always say, martial arts, the only time that really matters is now. It's the only time that really matters. And where you are now. So, as we get older, like I certainly find myself having to warm up more and warm down more. Never used to have to do that. But over time, I've had to make those changes. I've had to adjust for any injuries that I now have. It's like I threw my back out, like taking a book off a shelf. You know what I mean? It's something like that. So okay, now my back hurts. If someone picks a fight with me now, certainly can't do a lot of stuff. Let's see what I can do. So you train around it. There are workarounds. So I think, so when I say that I trained for 28 years and I never missed a day, I really mean that, because I've worked around any kind of injury. If I'm still recovering, I'm still sore, there are still things that I can do. So you change the level of intensity, and you change. Certainly when I was younger, I was very fiery. I wanted to get into fights. I wanted to do this. I enjoyed sparring. I just wanted to hit things, and it's like now less so. So that's changed. So personality changes, circumstances changes. So your training will change, and it doesn't make you any less of a martial artist so long as you keep training.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the 30s, within your 30s, you always seem to have that event that kind of changes your views on it. I've always found.
Absolutely.
Instance, I've done a lot of injuries when I competed now, but I hadn't had any injuries for about 10 years. And teaching a group of 5 and 6-year-olds one night, I landed funny on my foot, and the next thing was 6 weeks on crutches, and it was just. And I think at that point I realized I wasn't as resilient as I was 10 years previous, and it kind of changed how I approached my training from then on. A lot of it was based around injury prevention.
Right. Absolutely. And that one thing, it does change you. It's like 10 years ago, I woke up with sciatica. I remember the night I went to bed, and I remember the next night, because that night I had to stretch a bit more for some reason. Hips were a bit tight, back was a bit tight. Next morning, I felt like my leg and my lower back on my right side was on fire, and I couldn't walk for maybe 5 weeks. I was hobbling around, and it was like someone had got a hot knife and stabbed it into my leg. That, for me, I like, my right leg was my pride and joy. And it was like, okay, flexibility gone. There's been muscle wastage in my right calf now because the nerves don't fire up anymore. And it's like, well, that's not good. So, things have to change. Or, if you tear a hamstring. Now, weirdly enough, I probably shouldn't say this, but I will. Back in November last year, I tore my hamstring warming up. So yeah, it was bizarre as heck. So it's like the small things now. So one thing that I practice is being as mindful as I can of my overall state of being as often as I can, to the best of my ability. So I always know how I feel at the time, and that way I don't overeat, I don't overtrain, I don't do anything that could compromise what I'm doing. It's like when I'm watching these younger athletes doing these incredible moves, for instance, and I'm like, oh yeah, I used to be able to do that. Let's see if I can. And it's like recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I actually watched a video of yours this week, a portrait of a martial artist, and
yes,
it resonated a lot with myself until the point where I seen you do a butterfly kick, and I just thought, there's very little age difference in us with very similar journeys coming up, and I said, how can he still do that and I can't do it for the past 10 years? And you'd be a bigger guy than me. I was going, there's something missing in training here, but it was impressive.
I would say with a lot of it is muscle memory. A lot of it is, my body has changed over time, obviously, but it's like, it is muscle memory and a whole load of warming up, And like, when I was younger, I would drop into the splits, and that would be my warm up. Now I need to warm up to do the splits, and generally that's the workout. That's my stretching workout done. And I think, with Portrait of a Martial Artist, that particular video, that we shot that over 5 years ago, and I want to do a follow-up video to that, because 5 years on, my life, whilst things have changed around my life, the way I live my life is absolutely still the same. Nothing has changed in that regard. I'm still training lots. I'm still meditating lots. I'm still varying my training, and for the most part, yeah, no, it's just consistent. It's just, you just make minor changes here and there, and it is a lifestyle at the end of the day.
That makes me feel better that it was over 5 years ago. It's kind of lines more the 10 years since I've done it. But you mentioned meditation there. Do you think meditation is very important, not just for the martial artist, but in life in general for most people?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. It is your mental management system, so that you can enjoy a serenity that we seldom experience from the 50,000 thoughts that we have a day. It's and I would say, when we can meditate, it just clears out all the junk in here. So it's like, if my mind is, say, an email, my Gmail, for instance, and there are loads of emails that unread emails, unsorted, uncategorized, then it's like, hey, that's what our minds are thinking of. And then spam keeps coming through. Let's say the spam folder doesn't do anything. Everything comes through. So let's say we get a very important email. Yeah, we're very distracted still. It's like, so I with that analogy, I thought, right, let's create folders. Let's start putting those emails into those folders. Let's report this spam. I'll unsubscribe to this. That's what meditation is eventually, where you clear out all the junk that's happening. And I find that with mindfulness and meditation go hand in hand, as well as reflection. And reflection, I would always say to people, after an event of some sort, meditate first before you reflect. Because if you reflect after an event, let's say, you were in a competition and you got yourself, and let's say you lost it. Let's say I lost it. Okay, I lost the fight. Man, if I reflect instantly, you'll beat yourself up over it, because you're still you're still very subjective. You're too close to that event. As soon as you meditate, you detach from that event. And once you're nice and detached from it, when you start reflecting, you reflect more objectively. Okay, this is what I could have done, and I know why I made that mistake. Because so I think they all go hand in hand. And I think in terms of meditation, it's like, I meditate before I try to meditate as much as I can, because it's like, even if it's, and I've done this before, even I can meditate at a construction site where it's crazy outside, but on the inside it's peaceful. So long as it's peaceful inside, I'm okay with that. Now, it's like a boat only sinks if water gets in. If you let nothing get in, doesn't matter how stormy the seas are, you'll get to that shore. Doesn't matter which shore you end up on, you'll always be okay if you can handle yourself. And that's important. So meditation, if you know how to breathe, and it can be standing meditation, moving meditation. If you know how to breathe, you will always be able to handle yourself under pressure. And if you can handle yourself, you'll always have an impact over the outcome of the situation. And that's any situation. Now, the danger might be real, but how you choose to respond to it physiologically and mentally is up to you. And it really comes down to how you breathe. So it's like, I never make a decision when I'm very happy, or if for some reason I'm upset or frustrated, which rarely happens. I'm generally very happy all the time, but it's like I won't make any decisions, because it's like if you make a promise when you're happy, or if you do something rash when you were angry, for instance, you know what? You wouldn't have done any of those things if you were calm and if you meditated. You know, it's like you learn how to breathe first. You don't need to give an answer straight away. You know, I think that's so important, that way I don't find myself in compromising situations. Now, it's not just with martial arts. You know, obviously meditation with martial arts has its obvious benefits, but in terms of everyday life, you know, it's like, you know, when people say, "Oh, yeah, just take a deep breath, man, you'll be fine." Unfortunately, well, no, they are right. It's just how it's said. You know, it's like they are absolutely right. When you take a few deep breaths, it will physiologically calm you down. However, it's just how it's said sometimes. And that normally, I don't know if anyone ever said to you, "Man, just calm down, take a deep breath." It's like that normally doesn't calm you down.
Makes you worse now, but
yeah. But no, meditation is essential.
It's funny you should say that too, that never make a decision when you're happy kind of thing, because it's something I always say now. It's always say never make a decision when you're happy, and never go shopping when you're hungry.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's
yeah.
but it's just funny you should use those words. But you've trained in a lot of martial arts, as I said before. Is there any martial art that you haven't trained in before that you'd like to sort of delve into a little bit and get?
I've dabbled in a lot. I mean, in 28 years, I've trained with a lot of different people, and you know, it's I think there are certain elements of styles I've done that I would like to explore further. Like Kung Fu, for instance. Which style of Kung Fu? I mean, there's hundreds. You know, it's when I look at that, you know, it's like, hey, it's deep. You know, I think stuff like Wudang, for instance, that fascinates me endlessly, because it's intrinsically tied into Taoism, and Taoism, there's a huge focus on nature, the universe, and meditation. You know, that's something that I want to explore further. In terms of physical styles that would what combat and everything, it's like the ones that I would love to delve in further. I mean, I've done a fair bit, but I would want to take it further would be Salat. It's just because it's the sheer brutality of it. I think it's fascinating. It's but also, you know, you get a, I mean, not just martial arts as well, but having a general better understanding of anything like anatomy. You understand how the body works, for instance. So it's like having a better understanding of the body, and how it works, and then, okay, this technique does this, therefore this will happen to the body, and then that affects this. For instance, if you crack a rib, breathing's going to be a little tough. You know, it's like when you throw a punch, it's going to be labored. If you break a collarbone, for instance, throwing the punch with that arm is going to be very, very painful. Or if you break a thumb, doing a fist is, you know, yeah. So it's like, I think having a better understanding of the human body, as well as a deeper knowledge of psychology, the human mind. And it's like, I like to think that I have a fairly decent working knowledge of the mind, but every day I'm learning new things every day. And it's like, so where I am now, I know that there is the journey is a lot further to go. And for the most part, we probably don't even know what we don't know. So yeah, I think as we realize just how deep the ocean is, I think as we're treading along this path we're going, so long as we keep an open mind, it's like sometimes it's not so much styles for me that I want to learn. It's sometimes it's techniques that I've seen people do. Yeah. It's like, ooh, okay. I mean, there's like a, you know, there are styles of karate, for instance, and Shirinji Kempo, that you see some of the movements that they do, it's like, well, that was unexpected, very unorthodox. And it's like, let's watch that again. It's like you throw a kick at someone and then the leg just wasn't there, and now you're on the floor. Okay, yeah, that's a technique I want to learn, because you see all the other techniques, you might understand what they're doing, but then you see one that really wows you. And then that one technique, as soon as you start practicing that one technique, then you're like, okay, if I can do this with my arms, or I can do this with my legs, maybe I can switch it around. Let's see if I can do it this way around instead. So you apply the same principle to another part of your body. So for me, yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily styles. It would be like different techniques, because there are guys out there who do like nowadays, especially, I'm seeing all these kids do some absolutely phenomenal takedowns, or like very obscure submissions. It's like that was creative, and as a martial artist, you have to be creative. Yeah. So it's like I think the best martial artists are artists. So my instructor, for instance, he draws. He'll show me cartoons that he's drawn. He'll show me like when he draws portraits, for instance, they're phenomenal. It's like, who's she? Yeah, and he'd be like, oh, that was a girl I took care of in the nightclub 30 years ago. Like, you know, it's insane. So and when you have another art form, you are thinking in a different way, which feeds into your martial arts. Like my art form is my music, my piano. Not so much my violin, because I struggle with that, but I'm better with viola. But the thing is, with another art form, you can exist in every single dimension, every single type of universe, every single time frame, because you can create that, whether it's through music, through expression, and through painting, through drawing, all of this, even making stuff out of clay. The only limitation is yourself, but you can exist in all those things. In martial arts, the only time that really matters is now. That's the only time that matters. It doesn't matter what you did previously, because the only time that matters is now. I'm facing off with someone, you know, I'm in a real life confrontation. The only time is now. He doesn't care about what I've done before. He won't care about what I do afterwards. It's what I do now that counts. Yeah. And it's what I do now that counts. It doesn't matter that in training I managed to catch the guy with this wrist lock. It doesn't matter about that. What matters is, can I do it now? And if I can't do it now, can I make it work a different way? Can I do a different technique? So when you do something like that, what really helps with that is another art form. So people who dance, for instance, like, I watch a lot of dance because it's beautiful to watch. It's such a free-flowing form of movement. It's like Lindy Hop, for instance, when it's done professionally, it looks like very successful Aikido, because people are somersaulting, landing on their feet, and they're still smiling. And that's something I found difficult when I started learning dance, because as a martial artist, every single movement that you do requires a purpose. There is a purpose for this move. You do this to set them up for this, and then your hand has to be here. And when I first started doing dance, I think the instructor was getting a little frustrated with it, because she was saying, this doesn't need a purpose. You know, you do this movement because it feels good. Okay, and that leads you onto these other movements here that you can do. So it took a while for me to ease up and actually, you know, this is the art form. I just move how I feel. And, you know, I think when you have another art form, it absolutely helps with your martial arts.
Yeah, definitely. Funny you should mention that. Now, I read an article about 6 months ago regarding Conor McGregor, MMA fighter now, and they had a lot of different martial artists, and they like sort of going to the university and basically do a kick, and they measured the power in the kick. They see the difference between different arts, and Conor McGregor's, and I can't remember who the other guy was, theirs was significantly higher than everyone else's.
Really?
And it turned out that the two of them had actually danced when they were younger. Conor McGregor at school would have done Irish dancing.
Wow.
And it actually built up muscles in his legs that wouldn't be generally used in martial arts. So he had that extra strength in the legs due to dancing. But it was, I don't know how true we have. It's an article I read online. So
I love that. I mean, Jean-Claude Van Damme came from a ballet background. And, you know, I know he has a certain reputation over the years and everything, but, you know, in terms of leg control, okay, speed, and even I'm certain he can generate a lot of power. I mean, he's second to none, you know what I mean? And that does come from that dance background. And it's like, you know, I absolutely feel it helps. So like, if you're a gymnast, for instance, a gymnast tends to be one of the most well-rounded athletes. And, you know, if you do, say, wushu, for instance, you know, a lot of the movements are very, you know, beautiful, flowery, you know, it's like circular, and they're very aesthetically pleasing to watch. But that makes, you know, it's like, you know, you put in, I think that kind of form, being able to do all that, it feeds into the martial side of things. So it's like, you know, you change your hand position and it changes the position, it changes the technique completely. You know, it's so it's just readjusting another art form into what you currently do. You know, it's like it all feeds into it. So you know, if you're doing dance, I mean, dance requires core strength. It does require, you know, balance, rhythm, and that's something else, rhythm as well. When you're doing stick fighting, for instance, you know, your rhythm needs to sync with the other dude. You know, it's like, especially when you're doing the drills, you need to have that. I mean, as soon as one of you breaks the rhythm, one of you is probably going to get hit. You know what I mean? It's so sense of rhythm, timing. These are all things in martial arts, you know, and if you can get them from music, from dance, then you already have an understanding of that. Like I know, I know a guy who, well, I used to train him. He was he was he was on the he was quite autistic, and he was quite advanced with maths. His knowledge of maths was phenomenal, but he would be able to calculate probabilities and statistics, and that's how he will beat you. You know, it's like, okay, from this position you've done this, okay, a few times, so I know you're going to do this. So you would catch him out sometimes, but then he would learn from that. The more times you did, that he would always learn from that. You know, and with everyone, it's like he was really difficult to spar because he had calculated you and all the statistics and all the probabilities, and it's like when he got you, it's like, huh, I'm just a number to you, but you know, I'm literally just a number to you. But it's amazing though, you know, it's because you know that's using your circumstances to your advantage, you know, and I love that, you know. I think especially as that person could then be a very good teacher to those with similar conditions. You know, it's and I think being a good instructor, you know, you're able to spot, you know, how someone learns and cater towards that, because you know one size does not fit all.
Oh, definitely
And
not.
ultimately, it's the student who has to make the journey. The instructor just guides them as to where to go and how to get there.
Yeah, definitely. And finally, John, how can people find you online and find out more about your journey?
So yeah, I'm on Instagram. So it's XUEZHANG PhD. Or they can find me on, I believe you can find me on Facebook also. I have a public page, and also my website, which is xue-zhang.com. But yeah, no, like Sensei Emmett, thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Now, so I'll
Been
put
really
links
good
to
talking.
everything in the description there.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to give a shout out to the Lucadee who actually connected us for this interview. And
yes, he is a brilliant guy. You know, I have a lot of time for him. Very, very nice, very kind, like yourself, respectful. And you know, anytime that you would ever like me back, you let me know.
No problem. Thank you, John, and
Thank you.
all the best. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.